Okay, so welcome everybody. We are sitting with Helen Holyoake, and she is the founder, director, and manager and everything, the queen bee at Helco Promotions. And she really has decades of experience in the publicity industry, but most specifically helping authors get their books launched. So we're going to discuss, and Helen, we're going to start at the very beginning with the assumption that the person listening to us has done all the hard work. They've written the book, they've done their best effort, they've got the editor, they've got everything done. And they may or may not have a publisher. So those are the two queries. So maybe they're indie or self-publishing it, and maybe they've got a publisher. But what are the key essential things from that point an author has to start thinking about and doing?
Okay, so I think what I'll start off by saying is that if we take the one scenario, which is an indie or a self-published author, that author, assuming that they've gone through all the correct procedures to get their book properly produced. So that includes, editing and proofreading and proper layout and design and printing, so that when the final book lands on the desk of a reviewer or a distributor, it doesn't look like an indie book. So we do see those poor quality books. And unfortunately, even if the topic or the book itself is wonderful, it's going to let the author down. So that number one is very important. So if anyone is going that route of indie, there's help out there. There are companies, there's Sarah, there are businesses that can assist authors to get their books independently published, and it looks like a normal traditionally published book. So for me, that's number one. Number two, for an indie author, if they don't have a publicist, they are more than welcome to go ahead and try and generate publicity themselves through the normal traditional publicity routes, which is your standard newspaper, magazines, radio, TV, and online facilities. So that is, that it can easily be, it can be done, not easily, but it is going to be quite, it's going to be quite, difficult, because sometimes the journalists, and I mean, we've got Aria here, and who has reviewed books for many publications over the years, is that, you can email a reviewer, you can phone a reviewer, and if they don't know who you are, the chances that they're going to respond to you is negligible. So that is the worst. Do you want me to try going back onto the video?
Can try, absolutely. So here's my question. So we're sitting here, we've got the book, we've got some printed copies in our hands. What are the documents? What does an author have to get together to send to the journalists? And then how do they gather, and who should they be looking at sending stuff to?
So the very first thing is they need to create a press release or advance information sheet. Now, a press release or an advance information sheet is a document that gives a synopsis or description of the book, together with information on the author, preferably with an author publicity photograph, and a biography. It doesn't have to be very long or large, about that author's accomplishments in life. And that's like number one. That's the number one. If there is a launch, that a launch can be added onto that document. If there are any advance reviews that have been gathered by other reviewers or peers, those sort of quotes can be added onto a press release. Anything that's going to sell that particular book with a different angle. I mean, I can give you an example. I'm busy working on Anne Schleierbusch's Bloomer, and we had a lot of, the publisher managed to get some quotes from well-known authors, And all of those are included on the press release. And it just it just gives it a different angle. And it opens the appetite of the reviewer at the end of the day, because it's not just another novel. It's not just another book that's crossing their desks. Here is something that is a little bit special. It's more special than a book that nobody has heard about, or an author that nobody's heard about. So I mean, so that is just in a nutshell.
So they're gathering the AI, their advanced information sheet, and they're gathering a list of people that they're going to.
That's the second part. The first part is the press release. The second part is a list of people. So pre-publication, you can get advanced review copies printed at a fairly nominal price, and then hopefully send out to some of your fans, to people that know you within the industry. It doesn't have to be a lot, but that you can just start generating some just some interest in the book. And then once you've done that, you can then create a much larger media schedule of journalists that will review books in the traditional media, but you can add online publications and social media personalities, and you also review on social media. So we're not just talking about reviewing on traditional media, we are talking about reviews on social media platforms.
Okay, so you've got this extensive list together. Tell me, or speak us a bit through the timing of this, because between getting this to everybody, getting the advanced copies, how does that link to when the book actually hits the shelves? Because I'm assuming you don't want that all happening before people can go and actually buy your book.
Okay, so again, just to get the hype going before the book is finally printed and sent to the bookshops, and that can take sort of, it could take 2 to 3 months before publication date. So that's very important. So that timeline of those advanced reviews can happen up to 3 months before publication date. And then obviously once the books are in the shops and the press release is going to the traditional media, then they will pick up on the book, and they will pick up on the hype that has been generated in the previous few months. Obviously, we don't want big reviews in the Sunday Times or on Cape Talk Radio or Fine Music Radio when the books are not actually in the bookshops, because then we're wasting that publicity. You want the books, so that you a listener and you're listening to Page's review on Fine Music Radio, and it's so brilliant. And I know it happens to me even to this day. If there's a review or an interview with an author, I want to get into my car and drive straight to the local bookshop and go and buy a copy. And I would be very frustrated if I did that and the book was not in stock yet. So the timing is to make sure that once we get to the traditional media, where the public not known to the author is hearing about this book for the first time, the book is accessible.
Yeah. Tell us, Helen, obviously you do all this for an author. So that's obviously the beauty of a publicist, an external publicist like yourself, is you plan the campaign, you contact the media, I'm going to say harass the media, but you certainly promote the book. You try and get people on talk shows. And that, of course, is the critical period of launching a book. Do you find authors who do this themselves can do that? What do you find how do you find they actually navigate that terrain?
They can do it, but it's very challenging. It really is challenging. And I think there are a number of factors that come into it. Look, some authors are brilliant at self-promotion. I mean, I know, and I work with a number of them, but then there are other authors that are not good at putting themselves out there and self-promoting. And it's very difficult, so much easier for the publicist to sing somebody's praises and go, how fantastic this author is and what a brilliant book it is, and everybody should read it. It's much, much easier. It's just more challenging for anyone. And I think I would feel the same if I had a book out there. You know, I wouldn't want to go to my network and say, ha ha, rah rah, I've written a book. Are you going to interview me? I really wouldn't like to be doing that. So you know, those are the challenges that come into play.
Okay, so tell us now, and we're going to move on and talk about novels versus nonfiction, and then we're going to talk about post the first 3-month blitz. But I want to ask you, how important are physical book launches, those at the bookshops, even at a coffee shop where you invite everybody and you stand up and talk? How do you find that those contribute to the excitement behind the book, or even the sales?
Okay, so it's really all dependent on the author and their network circles. So, you know, we try when we're putting a launch together to say, do you know, have you got 50 close friends and family? Will they come to a launch? You know, because once we've got them at the launch, they will most definitely buy the book. But it's very embarrassing to organize a launch and you sit there and there are 10 people. So it's very much, and this is where the author needs to also work really hard at generating interest in a book launch and making sure that their network is invited. Yes, the bookshops and exclusive books have got mailing lists and they invite people to all their launches. But remember, some of these shops are having 2, 3, 4 book launches a week. So, you know, if you're on their mailing list, there's no way you're going to go to a launch every single night of the week. So it's you've got to work at it together. I mean, it's got to be a team effort. It can't just be done solely by the publicist. The publicist needs to tap into the network of the author.
Yeah, sure. And
launches are great. They're fantastic. I love when people come together, and I love it when other authors support other authors at their, you know, at their book launches. And I mean, we see a lot of that. We see a huge amount of support within our industry. If there is a book launch of somebody that we know well, you will go. You will go and you will buy books and you'll get them signed, and you'll probably stash some away for gifts. And you know, it is important, but it's not critical. It's not critical, and you don't have to do it. You're getting, you know, if you're paying a publicist, your value for the publicist is greater in publicity, because you're going to get far many more readers.
So Helen,
through publicity than opposed to 50 people at a book launch.
Right, exactly. Sunday Times 3.2 million readers, or it used to be, reading a book.
No, it's still big. I mean, you know, SABC2, Morning Live, they only interview 2 authors a week, one on a Saturday, one on a Sunday. But that's you know, that's what you have. And when authors say, well, I can't make it this weekend, or you know, when the request comes through, you know, the chances are that you're not going to have another opportunity is very high. So, you know, most of the time with the press, you know, when they say jump, you go high, and you try and you just go with it, because next week there'll be another book on their desks. You know, because we're competing, remember, and especially for independent authors, we are competing with the big 4 publishers and all the hundreds of books that they're putting out every single week. So when we get a chance to get a book reviewed or an author to be interviewed, we have to jump in and just do it.
Helen, tell me about, or tell us, Ray, about some of the books that you promoted that have been unexpected hits. I think we have and then unexpected flops, maybe. I mean, I was just looking at some of the big business books that have launched, and very quickly, within 3 months, they're off the shelves. So what have you worked on?
You know, it depends on the business book. It really, nonfiction, if we're just going to tap into business nonfiction has far longer longevity than fiction. Fiction is short-lived on the shelves. because it has to make way for other new fiction. But your business books, depending on the business book, can actually be around for quite a bit longer, particularly if there is a marketing campaign, publicity campaign, and perhaps if the author has a opportunity to speak to corporates, where they can go and speak to corporates and sell their books at an event. And I always use Bruce Fordyce as an example. I worked on his, it was literally a training guide to the comrades that he wrote during lockdown. And when he published the book, he did a marketing campaign, but I encouraged him because he speaks at running clubs every week. And in the first year that the book was out, it sold 5,000 copies, not through the retail, but because he had this network that he tapped into. So, and any author that has a network, they need to tap into that network. And particularly if it's nonfiction and business, most business authors have those networks that they can tap into and go and do talks and sell books at those events.
Tell us about a novel, how do novels perform, I think is the question, in the South African context on the shelves?
It's like how long is a piece of string, it's, if you are a Jodi Picoult or a Marion Keyes, the sales, or a Wilbur Smith, those sales are still potentially, they go into the tens of thousands. If we're talking about a local fiction writer, the sales, 4,000 copies is deemed as a bestseller in South Africa, and it's shocking. I mean, it's shockingly low. So it's very difficult to actually answer that question.
I've watched, speaking from personal experience, I know just how hard it is to sell books. I have to, as Helen knows, I've got a few books on the shelves, and it is a relentless, and that's what we wanted to talk about next, especially with Sarah Prince, who's one of our American authors. It's a relentless, ongoing job to keep your book in the mind's eye. But I've also watched, and I watched last year, Daniel Strauss,
Yes.
the Billionaire Mindset.
Yes.
Really sort of a sleeper hit, a sort of a book that came out of really nowhere. He's an entrepreneur coach, and I think he sold in the region of 15,000 copies. I don't have the figures.
And the book was, I think it was in English and Afrikaans, if my memory serves me correctly. So he tapped into both markets.
Okay, so what takes a book like that, unexpected, really a nobody, apart from the fact his wife was a former Miss Universe? What takes a book? What was it? The quality of the book? Is it the way he promoted it? What are the factors there? The X factors?
Sometimes the X factors is also just about timing, like 100% about timing. There's a gap in the market for something. It's like right now, the Jay Shetty book, the eight things of love, whatever it is called, and I can see the cover in mind. I can't remember the full title. That's just flying off the shelves. It's like #1 on the exclusive books bestseller list. And why? I mean, I've not read his previous book. I don't read that genre anyway. So. But it's just interesting to see that certain books have a much bigger sell-through, and there are other books, the new Michelle Obama book is doing very well. That's nonfiction, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because they're so well known, and that big social media machine is just carrying on and just driving those sales forward. But we do see some local authors, fitting into that mold with nonfiction, like Daniel Strauss, like Bruce Whitfield, You know, his books have done incredibly well, and they sell big numbers, big numbers. You know, his one book came out at the beginning of COVID, and I think the first Zoom virtual launch of COVID was for Bruce Whitfield's book. There were 800 people at that launch. I mean, it's just phenomenal. But then I think we had so many virtual launches during COVID that you know, the numbers started dropping. But what we did find was that the numbers were bigger for the launches, but it didn't translate to actual book sales.
Because again, you know, something, Helen, we have those books that seem so obvious. They're amazing books. They're just brilliant, and they just have sell 500 copies, which happens all the time.
I know, and it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And a lot of the smaller publishers and indie authors, they print like 300 books, you know, and then they're happy to sell them. And I wish there was a menu to create bigger sales. But having said that, there are things that are changing. I mean, this whole drive, this phenomenon of BookTok, and you know, which is an offspin of TikTok, has resulted in the romance sort of like thriller genre for age groups sort of 15 to 25. And those books are selling thousands and thousands and thousands of copies in South Africa. And so what's interesting about that particular genre and that particular style is we are growing a new set of young readers in South Africa. I mean, Colleen Hoover, one of her books last year, I think sold 6,000 copies in South Africa. You know, it's just like unbelievable. I have not read a Colleen Hoover. My one daughter has read Colleen Hoover, and she reads it in a day. And she fits into that age group. So what I'm saying is that, you know, they're different genres for different age groups. So we have to look at that. You can't just go, well, I've written this novel for whatever the target market is. And, you know, you must understand that novel then is not going to sell to those BookTokers. You know, it's going to sell to the market that you've written that novel for. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult, and it's very difficult to answer these questions because you know a lot of this is about age, it's about genre, it's about popularity, it's about issues. You know, it's, you know, what's current at the moment. You know, load shedding is on everybody's lips.
I saw one of the big books on all the tops of the exclusive displays are the 101 ways to use an air fryer.
Yes. Oh yes. No, but that's that. I mean, well, you know, just having said that, I actually cooked my roast butternut at lunchtime because I have load shedding from 4 o'clock until 8:30 tonight. So, you know, it's really relevant in today's, in the way we're living. It's stupid, and I can't believe that I'm doing this. But otherwise, I'm going to land up eating a sandwich, and that's not actually the best thing for me to have at dinner time.
Oh goodness. Okay, Helen, I think we're going to take some questions. I don't know if Sarah's there. She wanted to ask some questions. Are you there, Sarah?
She must just
Hello.
unmute. Hi,
Yes.
Sarah.
Hello, Helen. Thank you so much for all that you're sharing and your wisdom.
Thank you. And thank you for being here.
I'm a self-published author, published my first book with the huge help of Sarah as my coach last September, and for an American audience, but also a South African audience. And I kind of had my first big push, have gotten 250 copies out into the world. And now I'm kind of doing that push again. And I have, some people that are helping me with marketing and kind of these ideas. What would you say, where would you say to begin if you're doing a second big push and you're trying to get something back out there and get kind of excitement going again? How does an author, kind of navigate that? Would you say social media? Would you say go to networks? Would you say, what's your advice there?
So there are a number of things, and I'm talking from my experience in South Africa, because that's where my experience is based from. I would make sure that I am invited to as many literary book festivals as possible, because the minute you are invited to those events, the longevity of your book lives on. It goes on for much longer. So say, for example, a book came out in October last year. When did your book come out, Sarah?
September.
When did your book? September. And what is the genre of your book?
Inspiration memoir.
Okay, fantastic. So if that book came out in September, in October, it should have been submitted to the Franschhoek Literary Festival for consideration for Franschhoek Literary Festival in May this year. It should have been sent to the organizers at the Kingsmead Books Festival, because that also happens in May. There's also Time of the Writer, but that tends to be sort of literary fiction that happens in March. And then there are book events popping up all over the place. In Cape Town, I think before I was there was an event in Simonstown. There's the Fishhook Library, for example, always has events. The Rosebank Writers Club has regular events. If you're a woman, there's Women's Zone, which is run by Nancy Richards and Beryl Eichenberger. They do events and they invite women authors to come speak to their book clubs. In Johannesburg, we have the same. There are events that are run by event specialists that invite authors to come and speak at their events. And I think with that going on, it gives you an opportunity to be seen and heard by different readers than you have in your immediate network circle. And then it gives you an added opportunity to get publicity generated for your book in the traditional press. Because if you're being all over the place, people are then interested. Well, gosh, Sarah Prince has been invited to all these events. There must be some merit in her book. We need to look at it. We need to read it. We need to consider reviewing.
Yes,
Hope that
amazing.
helps, Sarah.
So helpful. Yeah, that's so helpful. And I hadn't even considered any of those environments. So thank you so much. Very helpful.
Yes, and that question, Helen, is that thing. It's like beyond people I know. And I always say that when we're working on a book, it's like, how does somebody who doesn't know you, what will they get out of this book? So that's so important. Other questions, you can also put them in the chat if you've got a particular question, or if you just don't have a question, don't need to dig deep. Helen, what is your experience of the average book? You would know more than I would, sold page readers in South Africa. What is our sort of, I know you said 4,000 is a bestseller. It feels very bleak, that to me, that 4,000, that's right.
It is bleak, but if you look at the literacy, the state of the literacy in South Africa, it's not very high at all. And that's why we are so encouraged, and the booksellers, the retailers with bricks and mortar stores are so encouraged by the whole book talk movement, because they're suddenly selling books to an audience that they've never sold books to before. So that's it's very important, and it's very encouraging. I think Justine has a question.
Justine has a question.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, Justine.
So, hi, I'm writing a young adult's kind of dystopian adventure, and I'm only finishing my first draft now, but I've also worked in the past in social media and marketing and magazines. So I was just wondering, like, as part of the publicist's role, would you have a specific book talk strategy for a book like mine, or is it up to the author to do the social and you do all the more traditional kind of media placement?
So at the moment, I'm actually working on a very big rom-com book that is very much targeted towards the book talk market. And we are doing a lot of research and gathering of information of book talk influencers so we can get advanced review copies to the book talkers so they can start reading and creating that hype. And I think that's very, very important. And YA is becoming very sexy. You know, we used to battle with YA, but it just seems to be a genre that is selling through beautifully at the moment.
And I mean, would it be up to the author, even at this stage, to, I mean, even though I worked in social media, I'm vaguely allergic to it. So my own platform is very private and, you know, but would it be up to the author to establish some kind of a presence on book talk, or would it be more up to the book talk reviewer?
I think if you're on Instagram, because you know, book talk is a spin-off from Instagram. If I was you, I would definitely create a presence on Instagram, because that way you are going to generate followers, and especially if you've got a book coming out, and those followers are going to then be interested in your book when it's published and is available. So I think that it's very important. Beg your pardon?
Sorry, did you mean establish a presence on TikTok?
Yeah, TikTok. TikTok, book talk, TikTok. Yes, sorry, not Instagram. Sorry. Yes, cool. Definitely on TikTok. And as you know, with TikTok, book talk, those reviews that you see are peer reviews, so they are not written by professional book reviewers. And the whole reason why the youth are just gobbling these books up is because it's their peers that are talking about the book. It's their peers that are reviewing the book and saying, I read this book and I read it in a day. And this book spoke to me because there was an emotion. There was an emotion involved in that review. And that's what it's appealing to, that age group of readers.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Good. Aria, I think Aria had a question, but I also just want to talk about distribution before we close as well.
Aria, have you got a question there?
Yes, I've got a question. I've also got a comment to make. Since I was in the media, when I got books from publicists, etc., if the book came from the writer themselves, there was a feeling like, oh, it wasn't such a good book, and that might have been totally unjustified. So I really would urge writers, if they can, to get a publicist. It's much better when it comes from somebody else than somebody you use the author punting your book. It looks very amateur. So I would really suggest that people go with publicists as much as possible. And then my question is, Helen, I mean, I know that you did publicity for Fool's Gold, which was a collection of an anthology of short stories, which I edited. Yeah. How to make short stories sexy? They seem to be the most unsexy genre in the world at the moment. Well, in South Africa, they're not very sexy. America, they are more sexy. How do we do this? I mean, I've been thinking of a short story festival, even a day-long short story festival, people reading stories, events, but people hate short stories.
I actually can't understand why, Aria, because, you know, in the day we live in these days, the way we live, you know, we don't have time. It's quite hard to read a full manuscript. Whereas, you know, I enjoy short stories, but I get where you're coming from. I just find that when I don't have time, reading a short story is infinitely better than not reading at all. So, but I love the idea of a short story festival, even if it is a day festival, and getting people to come in and read short stories. And it just, something needs to be done to, as you say, to make it to make it more sexy. And I think it's the angle that we need to come up with an angle as to how to promote short stories. And there are lots of short story writers out there. I'm sure we can garner, people to participate.
Yeah, I mean, even just in Johannesburg alone, we have so many. I mean,
Exactly. Maybe
everywhere.
maybe a combination of short story and stories and poetry, and because those are the two genres that I struggle the most with when it comes to publicity.
Absolutely.
It's a really, really difficult genre to promote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, sorry, just to jump into both Aria and Helen, on Kindle and on Audible, a lot of the big name authors release shorts, so 5,000 word, version of a character offshoot, etc. So it seems to have moved a little bit onto the digital platform, as long as you're aware that when you're spending that one Audible credit of 269 Rand, it's going to a story that's 57 minutes. So I think
exactly
that's been a bone of contention in the digital publishing realm. So just to move on, we've got about 4 minutes left. Helen, speak about
just the distribution. So what I want to say to the indie self-published authors, that it's very, very important to get your books distributed by a reputable distributor in South Africa, because if you can't just go selling books to one little bookshop here and one little bookshop there. You need someone to be taking that book and selling it through to all the bookshops, all the exclusive books. Exclusive books don't do central buying. The salespeople from the distributors have to go from shop to shop to shop with all their new books every month, selling the new books and generating an interest and getting the managers, the buyers in the shops to order books, and the salespeople can then talk about the marketing plans. So, and that will encourage bookshops to order in larger quantities. And I'm saying, no, don't expect to get, huge big quantities, because unless you Wilbur Smith, you're not going to get there. But you remember, if you're getting to a wider base, if you're getting into all the 42 exclusive bookshops, plus all the bargain books, plus your Wordsworths and Estrels and P&As, it does add up, and it's very important to have that representation. And as a publicist, I want to be able to promote the book in the press, and then for readers or listeners to radio, I don't want them to be able to not be able to find the book. I can't tell you how many times a media house will get hold of me and say, Helen, we had your author on TV or radio or whatever, and now these people are all asking they can't find the book anywhere. So I almost insist that the book is available in the shops before the first bit of major publicity breaks.
Helen, I think with that, and I can see we've put her camera back on and she's downloading from the aliens.
I don't know what it is. I've never had this before, and I do Zooms all day long,
It's very funny.
Maybe it's the 6 hours or the 10 hours of load shedding or something that we're getting at the moment. I don't know. I've got no clue. I've got signal, I've got Wi-Fi, I've got, everything.
Just a quickie, apart from, and just in terms of naming the distributors, because there's not a lot. There's Blue Weaver.
They're the best. Sorry.
On the Dot.
Sorry.
Is that not happening anymore?
Well, no, On the Dot doesn't exist anymore, but Booksite Africa is a big warehousing facility, and they warehouse for all the big publishers and Blue Weaver. Protea is quite good. They are, and I've got a document, if anyone wants, I've got a document of how to sell my book, and it's a PDF document, and it's got all the names of the distributors with their contact numbers and email addresses, and I will happily share that with anyone that may require that. just to set up their own distribution.
And that's such a huge asset. Thank you for offering that. And if anybody
No,
wants,
it's a pleasure.
I will email everybody with your email. Well, you can just say your email address if you want to. What's your email
Oh,
address?
yes. Paige, did you want to ask a question? No. Nice to see you. It's Helen, my name, Helen, at helco.co.za.
HELCO, Helen at
Yes.
HELCO.co.za. Helen, thank you for your time. Thank you for your frenetic energy. And thanks all.
I'm just so sorry about the video. I'm really disappointed. But you know, technology, you know, it's just a difficult thing. But I really appreciate having the opportunity to share with all of you. It's really been lots of fun, and I just wish you all the best with your books, and you know, yay to more book sales.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you, everybody, and good night or good afternoon.
Oh, good. Ready for the next one. Take care, Sarah.
Bye.